Ms. Pusino?
Here.
Ms. Egan?
Here.
Ms. Marcus?
Here.
Mr. Parati?
Here.
Mr. Scher?
Yes.
Ms. Skellen?
Here.
Mr. Sampone?
Here.
Ms. Wojwitz? Ms. Calderon?
Thank you to the Township of Fairfield and to the editor of Progress on January 6, 2022, and the Star Ledger on the same day. Welcome to all of you who are coming out on this rainy day. I don't know if it's still raining out there tonight. But we appreciate you all coming. We have a full evening forward. We have lots of good things, test scores, and reporting on Mr. Gupta, so we're looking forward to that. I'm going to just interject one thing right here. It's a little out of sequence, but it is on the agenda. We will be welcoming a new director of special education, and I would just like to, at this time, say thank you to Mr. Mcquaid and the committee, the administrators, the staff, and all those who participated in all of the rounds and the whole process of hiring this person. It just went so, thank Mr. Chochi, the whole thing just went so smoothly. And I think because of that and all the time and effort you all put in, and the questioning and the candidates that we actually all did receive, Mr. Chochi will go over that and explain a little to you, but we had great candidates, and I think that speaks accolades for West Essex, because you're not going to get those type of candidates with those types of credentials come to a place that doesn't have a reputation. So I just want to say thank you to all of you who sat through the whole process and brought to us a candidate that we will be accepting tonight on the agenda, and that we're just so pleased to have as part of our new staff. So thank you for that. With that being said, Mr. Joshi, we're going to your superintendent's report.
Okay, good evening. Welcome our members of the public here, board. I have a brief report tonight. I just want to give you a quick update on the strategic plan. We had our last meeting on Thursday, October 13th at 4 o'clock, and spent a lot of time establishing our goals as a committee. Next meeting is on Thursday, October 27th. That's our 6th and final committee meeting with our full strategic planning team, and that's scheduled for 3:30. At that meeting, we will be working on, the focus will be on creating objectives and action items as they relate to goals. There will be a final meeting which includes members of our faculty and staff, in which we will assign specific duties, so then we can then carry out those action items. Okay, that date has yet to be determined. Okay, October 10th, school was closed for students. However, our staff was in all day for professional development activities. Okay, the school improvement panel, also known as the SKIP committee, okay, they worked collaboratively on professional development planning. Each building has a SKIP committee which will meet periodically throughout the school year to discuss items such as planning for professional development and or staff morale. Okay, I want to thank both of those committees. I want to thank our Director of Curriculum, Mr. Gupta, both principals, Mr. DiLiberto and Dr. Dunleavy, for developing a collaborative agenda for October 10th. That was both meaningful and educational, taking into account our district goals for this school year. On October 10th, our staff participated in professional learning communities, also known as PLCs. This was an opportunity for our staff to work together in departments and understand data they gathered to help one another make better decisions for meeting the needs of their students. Okay, they also participated in some team building activities. There was a presenter that worked in conjunction with St. Elizabeth University, who is the agency that we've partnered with for our culture and climate initiative. We had a speaker from Empowerment Solutions come in and provide 2 one-hour sessions on emotional intelligence to our middle school and high school staff. A big part of that day was our pizza luncheon, where we had over 50 pizzas donated to the faculty and staff from local businesses. There were 2 teachers, Lauren Summer from the middle school and Amanda Fernicola from the high school. I challenged them to see if they can get pizzas donated to us, and they, within 2 days, went out to the community, went to a variety of vendors, and were able to get over 50 pizzas donated. And I do want to just put their names up there because their generosity, it was just awesome. So those are all the vendors, the pizzerias in our area, and they definitely deserve a huge thank you. And here's a little picture of what our pizza buffet looked like. So yeah, it was awesome. Roseland, we had La Pizza and Frank's Pizzeria from Caldwell. We had a bunch of pizzerias, Forte, La Familia, Franco's, Mandera's, and Frank's Pizzeria, as well as Fresco. Then into Fairfield, we had Hollywood and Boardwalk Pizzeria, Il Panino, and then we went out as far as Pinebrook to Gencarelli's. So great day. Our maintenance and grounds guys went out and picked all the pizzas up for us, and just a great gesture from our community. Just back up here, pizza chats with the superintendent are underway. Those are the meetings that I have where we get together and we have no agenda, we share ideas, we connect with one another, and we discuss the latest issues impacting education. Pizza chats are the meetings that I have with my faculty and staff. Okay, coffee chats, our first one is scheduled for Friday, November 4th. Coffee chats are for West Essex parents and families. We accept the first 10 people that respond to the email that goes out, and I'm happy to say that we put our first notification out, and it filled up, the whole thing's filled up in the first day. So that one's scheduled for November 4th. Anybody who gets selected will get a confirmation email to come for that evening. Okay, before I get to the report, I do get the opportunity to piggyback off of Mrs. Calderon regarding our Director of Special Services. So I am pleased to present Dr. Elizabeth Mcquaid for the position of Director of Special Services. Dr. Mcquaid went through a rigorous interview process with a highly competitive group of applicants. She participated in several rounds of meetings, including 2 diverse committees of various stakeholders, including CST members, special education teachers, administrators, and we also had input that I was able to get from our 2 co-presidents of our special education parent advisory group. Dr. Mcquaid is a very experienced school administrator with an impressive resume and credentials, including over 10 years of administrative experience both as a director and supervisor of special services. She's currently serving in her 10th year in a K-12 district as the Director of Special Services in Passaic County, and she's currently has staff working in 9 different buildings. Prior to that, she spent 2 years in Bergen County at another district, K-12, where she was working out of 6 buildings in a district that had an enrollment of 2,800 students, and her position there was Supervisor of Special Services. Prior to that, she spent 6 years in another Bergen County district, Fair Lawn Public Schools, where she served as a member of the Child Study Team, specifically as an occupational therapist. She has more than proved herself as an effective leader, as evidenced by her administrative experience. She also is currently the president of the Passaic County Association of Special Services Administrators. She's committed to professional learning. She has her doctorate degree. She values teamwork, and I know she's very excited to join our leadership team. So I am very happy to introduce Dr. Elizabeth Mcquaid, who's here tonight. And she will be an action item later on the agenda. So with that being said, I'll turn it over to Ms. Hobie.
Hi, good evening. Melissa changed the chart. I'm just going to say that. The first thing we said is she's obviously really young, doesn't wear glasses. So, little small. So, the student data safety system, this is the system that we are required to put all of our, used to be the violence and vandalism, all the numbers of students and the reasons and why they are suspended from school. Obviously, we can't put names or anything else like that. So since you can't read it, I'll read it to you. The first one is we had no threats this year at all in either building. Physical contact. Physical contact is not a fight. It could be a push, a shove, a trip, something of those like that, but not an actual fight. I had 2 of those. Ms. Tamburi had 17. A lot of handsy kids in the middle school. Simple assault or an actual fight. We had 2 of those in the high school. Ms. Tamburi had 2 also here in the middle school. There was a weapon in each one of our buildings. Mine was a paring knife that some student brought to peel an orange or an apple. But we have to report it, and we do that. Hiv Investigations, as you know, in the high school, we had 14, and 8 of those were confirmed. The middle school had 16. They had 12 of those confirmed. Substance offense for us, we had 22 positive cases. The middle school had 1. We had 8 electronic vapes confiscated, and the middle school had 5. So those are the numbers that we're required to put into the SSDS system and then certified. We have to do that every year. The next slide is my self-assessment Hiv grade. This used to be done during the summer, and then they changed it for us, and they put it now in this October meeting. So what this is basically we evaluate ourselves, and we do it in certain categories, such as programming initiatives, board policy, board procedures, trainings, curriculum, instruction, Hiv personnel, the ABS in each building, the district coordinator, our reporting procedures, investigations, and then our state reporting. So as you'll see, a 78 is a perfect score. The high school, we received a 75. We gave ourselves a 75, and the middle school got a 76. So the reason for that is that in the high school and also in the middle school, we felt like we need to implement different or more programs and have a little bit more of a well-rounded approach to HIV and the education of it to the students. We also needed to discuss it with the students in a little bit more depth and detail. Also for us in the high school, another reason we kind of knocked ourselves down a point was to say that during the week of October, we could do a little bit better job of Red Ribbon and Week of Respect and a little bit more of character education. So those are what we report to the state in those categories. This is also, I forgot to tell you, this is last year, which gets confusing. I have to go back a year. So if you think about last year for us and HIV and different things, we agreed that we needed to change some things and we needed to get involved with some things. That's why we went and partnered with St. Elizabeth. So those are some of the things, and we also did some things you'll see at the end of this report, that we took the things that we felt we needed to work on and started to actually implement those things. So I will be able to tell you a little bit about that. So the next slide here is some of our initiatives in the high school. Obviously, we are fully compliant with HIV legislation. We train our staff regularly. We meet as a safety team and talk about HIV on a regular basis. We have a district climate and culture, which we partnered with St. Elizabeth. Okay, we do training with Mr. Fogarty, as well as I know the board does. We also have a multicultural club, student advisory panel. I'll get to those guys. We're now doing a door decorating for Anti-Bullying Prevention Month, with all the clubs are going to get involved. We have partnered with peer leaders in the high school. We also have a Minding Your Mind series, which we have implemented through the health curriculums, which talk a lot about mental health and the stress that a lot of these issues we're finding are coming on kids. So those things are going on. We also had Mr. DiLiberto during the Week of Respect. He brought in the FBI for us to talk about safety and cybersecurity, which is huge. Mrs. Hulse is doing winter wellness and acts of kindness in the high school. They're doing a quote of the day, and we've challenged students inside of the clubs in the high school to actually just try to be a little bit more kind and do it in a really positive manner. The middle school is a little bit different. Again, they are fully compliant. They do a very big week of respect here for the 7th and 8th graders. They do lots of things throughout the year. I'm sure Dr. Dunleavy could really elaborate on this. They also do express positive awareness in their daily bulletins. They had NCPD come in and speak to the students regarding social media and the HIV laws. They also have we will also have the anonymous reporting and Save the Promise Club. They have We Lead, which is the beginning steps of into our peer leader program. And they've also partnered with St. Elizabeth. So some of the things that we needed to do, if you look at last year's grade, was obviously we partnered with the teachers and the teacher advisory committee that Mr. DiLiberto brought in. We spoke to them about some of the things that we heard last year from the kids, what they said they were seeing in the classrooms and in the hallways. We brought it to the teachers, and they were like, we need to learn how to recognize things. How can you help us with that? We went to our student advisory panel, and these kids are amazing. They're so great. We said, we need help. Can you help us? They were like, we're in. They're going to work with us and partner with us to do basically scenarios, things they see, and do almost like a professional development. And because I now, work in Lisa Swanwick's shoes a little bit, going to partner with the maskers and have them act them out so that we can stop them at different vignettes, at different parts, and say, stop, this is actually what happens in a lunchroom. Have the kids act it out. Stop. Okay, teachers, what would you do? How would you interject? What do you do to the victim? How do you deal with the kid who's being the aggressor? And actually do it from what the kids are telling us are actually happening in the building. And the student advisory panel are very excited about it. Maskers kids don't know yet. We're going to ask them. We're going to ask them. I kind of figured they love the state. So, and then also too, what we did was we partnered with peer leaders. We went to the peer leaders and said, we need your help. You guys have the freshmen. You have them in groups of 10, 12. We need you to talk about some responsible social media. We need you to talk about very specific lessons that they have now are going to integrate in their program all the time that they meet with them, because they meet with them between now and January, February. So they're going to integrate how to talk to each other. When you post something, how does the kid receive it? How does that kid feel? And make sure that they understand that words matter, symbols matter. I have a big thing about that. And Michelle Giampapa's been great. She's been really partnered with us with this and jumped on board and really got the peer leaders involved in this. So we're working with the kids. We figured I can yell at them and scream all this stuff all I want. But when you see a senior talking about it in a group of 10, it's a lot more effective. So we're going to try to get it from both angles, from the students as well as from the staff. And just very quickly, talking about explaining the new HIV law, we did that in grade level meetings. We did that to each grade level. So actually when they come into my office or Ms. Westervelt's office, they're like, I know, we can't post anything. I have to get permission. Yeah, that's exactly right. Anything you put out there could come in our office. And they now know that kind of stuff. We tell them all the time about how Snapchat and Instagram can get in our office. I don't have social media like Mr. Emmering. We don't have it, we're old. But I now learn a lot about it, and I don't want it to end up on my desk. So we tell them all the time, don't post things that you wouldn't show your parents. It'll make life a lot easier for you. Mr. DiLiberto also explained it at the back to school night. We had a really nice turnout for that. And he explained the new HIV law, security, and some other things. And it seems to have gone very well. The FBI also talked about cybersecurity and how they don't really know who they're talking to out there. He said, you think you're talking to a peer, and that person is 50 years old in their mother's basement. So be careful. Don't do anything if you can't tell your parents about it. And if you do something, tell your parents about it, or come and tell us. So those are some of the things that we're working on. We did take everything that's going on, and it's a kind of changing landscape for us as we move through and try to make sure that we're doing everything we can. We met with Patrick the other day, coming up with core values. The kids were involved in that. Our student panel was involved in the core values with the teachers, coming up with it. Unbelievable conversations. We were supposed to pick 3. We picked 4 because we just have to be overachievers. So are there any questions that I can answer for you?
Just a comment.
Sure.
I love both the peer leader and the engagement of the masters and the students. I think it's the most effective way that you can solve some of these really complicated issues.
Thank you. I agree. I said last year if we could have brought Chris Corbo and put him in a 3rd grade class, they'd all be like, he's an NBA player, oh my God. You know, but I agree. And hopefully, you know, Mr. DeLabro and I've talked about the peer leaders kind of expanding that program and getting the kids really involved. They listen to each other much more than they listen to us. So, can I answer any other questions? Because I am running out to a band meeting. I have TOB this weekend. Right, Ray?
Good timing, Dave, thanks. Okay, good evening, everyone. I have the pleasure of giving up the results of our assessment report. So these are all of our test scores, standardized test scores from last school year. So there's quite a bit. First of all, just you see all the testing that's going on. I'm sure you're aware of most of these. SAT, ACT, you have Lincoln assessments. We had the Start Strong already in September. We have NJGPA, which is a graduation requirement. That's later in March. NJSLA, that'll be in May. And of course, our AP exams as well. So a lot going on. It's already started, and it will just continue. So these numbers are bigger because I'm not as young as Melissa over there, but I'd put 1 subject per slide, but you'd have 200 slides. So hopefully you guys can see these numbers. This is NJSLA. Again, this is all last year. If you remember, we took a pause from NJSLA during the COVID years. We started back again last year. So I put the last 4 years just so you have an idea of how we've been doing for the last 4 years. And also I put there, you'll see it in parentheses under the numbers, how we compare to the state. So we try not to compare year over year because it is different students. And students are going to perform differently. But what we do look at is our difference between how our students did and how the state did. Soon, all of the districts will be posting their numbers, and we'll be able to compare our numbers to comparable school districts. For now, all we have is the state average. So you can just take a look. If you look at ELA 7, for example, in 2019, we were 17% ahead of the state. 2019 was the last time we took NJSLA. And in 2022, we're about 25% better than the state average. And you can take a look and see that goes all the way down, ELA 7, 8, 9. And this year, or last year I should say, we stopped testing 10th graders and 11th graders. So that stopped back in 2019. So NJSLA is grades 7 through 9. Similarly in math, again in math we did a little bit different. In 2019, Algebra 2 was for 10th grade students, so that was our higher. And then this past year, we only test to 9th grade. So that 100% you see at the very bottom, those are our 9th grade students that are in Algebra 2. So clearly those are our advanced students, and that's why you have the 100%. But there again, you can see, you can compare how we did compared to the state last year and this year. The one number that we are looking at, and of course our math supervisor is looking at that carefully, is our Math 8. You can see that the gap, well, you can see the passing rate on the math section for the state is 15%. Way, way, way down. We knew math and science were going to be greatly affected by the pandemic. It's very, very specific problem solving, and sure enough, it hit, and it showed itself the most in grade 8 across the state. Our difference between the state is something we look at. I will say, in looking at the growth numbers from last year, which was very encouraging, is that 8th grade class showed the most growth. So they may have started in a lower spot, but they did grow by the year's end. So we're going to follow that group, and I'll talk a little bit more later about some of the things we're doing to address that. But you can see all the other courses are pretty typical, and we did, again, very well on the NGSLA, in ELA, and mathematics. You can see on geometry, we're 30% over where the state was. So science, we don't have as much data. This one's a little bit newer, so we only have 2019, 2022, and there it is again, same thing. It's the 8th grade group for math and science really struggled. We were only 2% better than the state. In 2019, we were 14% better. So that is something we look at, and again, we dive deeper. I'm just giving you the surface of the data. We have a lot of more specific data that our staff looks at. We have every standard that they struggle in. We have every standard that they did well in. We see all the trends. What were the topics? What were the types of questions? We just had on October 10th, Damien mentioned at our PD day, and how we started that day was a presentation on data. So our entire faculty sat in and we went over the data. And then they spent 2.5 hours in their PLCs diving deeper into the data. And again, it goes into every question type. We know exactly which kind of multiple choice questions our kids struggle with. We know what type of concepts in math and ELA they struggle with. So those are things that you don't see, you're not going to see on these slides, but trust me, they're going on behind the scenes. And Science 11, you can see we were 14% better than the average in 2019, and we're around the same this past year. So the juniors last year, when they took this test, the state told us this was going to be required, and it was going to be required for graduation, and our kids did very, very well. Of course, we heard afterwards that the governor said we were not going to count this test. It was just going to be used as a pilot, and this year's juniors taking the GPA, NJ GPA, will be the first class that it counts towards graduation. But you can see we did very, very well. I'm very proud of this group. It was the first time they had taken this test. The other building administrators were there. They took it very seriously. They had questions about the test, but once we started, they got to work, and you can see the results were quite impressive. We're 27% above the state in math, and looks like 25% above the state in ELA. And they called that as graduation ready. You were either not graduation ready or graduation ready. So that will be the same scale used for this year's group of juniors. And there's more information, by the way, if you're a little confused about graduation requirements, there's a link on here, which is going to be posted on our website, and also on our website, it's been there already. There's a section just on assessments, and I have a bunch of links there. It's constantly updated. I'm always checking what the latest is on the state, but it does go over the latest graduation requirements. So let's shift gears over to the SAT. And again, this is the class of 2022. So the other tests were the tests we're all taking last year. This is the class of 2022. So they could have taken this as a junior. Some of them might have taken it as a sophomore. Some of them might have taken it as a senior. So it looks at the averages for our class of 2022. So we had 189 people take the SAT. I think a lot of that has to do, if you look at the past 2 years where there was a struggle with SATs, is that we did host it. And that makes a big difference for our students to be able to take the SAT in a comfortable environment. SAT numbers, if you look at the very bottom, New Jersey, in 2021, the total score average was 1125. It dropped to 1,079 in the state. So SAT scores really, really dropped off last year. West Essex scores did not. And again, that's a testament to what we went through during COVID. We kept the buildings open. We gave students the opportunity to be here. And that class deserves a lot of accolades. There are other senior classes that lost proms and major events. I'd argue that that senior class probably took the biggest hit in academics, because their sophomore and junior year are key years in math and ELA for tests like the SAT and ACT. And both of those years were negatively impacted. And to actually go up 1 point of an average when the rest of the state dropped significantly says a lot about the class of 2022. So I'm very proud of that senior class. ACT numbers dropped. We had 190 taken last year. We're down to 128 this past year. The scores did drop, and actually I put at the very bottom, you can't read it too well, it's a little blurry there, but NPR just reported out recently ACT scores across the country dropped to their lowest average since 1991. Yes. ACT definitely saw a much more dramatic loss than the SAT did, but you can see the numbers there. Our kids still performed well. You can see how they performed in the class of 2019, 2020. They're right up there, in fact, and better in a few categories. We went up in math, and we also went up in science. So again, a very good, strong performance by the class of 2022. Our AP numbers. So with all that chaos going on, our AP enrollment was the second highest ever, and the second highest in the last 5 years. But 824 tests were taken, AP exams were taken. I'm sorry, 827. 3 kids who were not enrolled in an AP class took it independently. So we actually had 3 more tests than the AP enrollment. Percent of students who took the exam, everyone took it, and we had some students who didn't take a course also took it. So that's also great to see. Number of students enrolled in 1 or more AP courses, 293. So that means 293 students took 827 exams. That's a lot. You know, typical West Essex students, some of these AP kids are typical AP kids. They're taking 2, 3, sometimes 4, sometimes 5 AP courses in a year. We always guide them to be careful, stressing themselves out, but some of these students are very, very driven, and God bless them, they do it. But 293 for 827 tests is a very, very large number. And again, we went up. If you look at the percent of total AP students with scores, with passing scores, last year we were at 77%. We went back up to 82%. I don't know how many of you are familiar with this. They've been doing the AP Student Scholar Awards for a few years now. So I put the criteria there. I'm not going to go through all of them, but basically, depending on what your average was and how many you passed, you get a different honor or a different award. So our AP Scholars, we had 58. And then as you can see, it starts to move up. If your average score was 3.25, then it goes up to, for students, average score of at least 3.5 on all AP exams and scores of 3 or higher on at least 5. We had 60 students in that range. And then we started this last year. This was our inaugural year. This is our first time we've had students complete this. It's a new program. It's called our AP Capstone. So we have 2 courses for AP Capstone. It's AP Seminar and AP Research. So the students have to pass those 2, and then they have to pass 4 other AP exams in order to receive the AP Capstone diploma. And we had 11 students accomplish that. And I'll highlight their names in just a bit. But just to round up, and you can see numbers over the previous years, our numbers of scholars went up, our average AP exam score went up, and of course this was our first year for Capstone, so we have 11 there.
Isn't the Capstone a Rutgers-based program?
No, it's college boards. There's a lot of universities and things that use the word capstone, but this particular one is strictly by the College Board.
Thank you.
So here are the winners, and I put some of them in bold and italics because I feel bad. We don't get their scores before they graduate. So some of them took AP Research as seniors, and we don't get to acknowledge them until they're already graduated and gone. So, but I still want to recognize them. We have Joshua Adelsberg, Christine Agajanoff, Zach Atlas, Nicole Candela, Isabella DeRose, Devin Golden, Zachary Lieberman, Thomas Mierzwa, Alyssa Rodriguez, Priya Shah, and Molly Simon. So congrats to that group. They will always be our first inaugural award winners of our AP Capstone diploma. And if you don't know what AP Capstone is, it's not a lot of school districts in the state. I haven't checked the latest numbers. Offer this. So it is a way to distinguish our students from others. Those courses very specifically are geared towards college skills. So there's a lot of research, a lot of presentations, a lot of making arguments. They go into those skills that they're really going to need regardless of their content area. And the best part about those courses is it's not specific to a particular content. You could totally do a report or research paper on hip hop or sports or music or maskers. Any topic you like. So kids who are just passionate about a particular topic can flourish in our AP Research and AP Seminar courses because it's not social studies or English or math or your typical courses. It can be, but it doesn't have to be. Oops. Oh, there we go. So I mentioned some of the things that we do to address the data. I mentioned this earlier. We presented it to the full faculty, provided PLC time. As you know, we adopted Linkit. The next step in Linkit, which we're working on this year, is to customize our own assessment. Not just use a Linkit assessment, but create our own and look at the results. What we found last year is the Linkit assessments were a pretty good indicator of how well they were going to perform on NJSLA. So we're going to continue our use of Linkit, but we have to give our staff time, and that's what we've been doing. We provided training, additional training for them. We're doing some turnkey training in the departments, and as I mentioned, the math, ELA, and science, they can dive a little bit deeper because they do have test scores. And this last piece, which kind of goes overlooked, when we talk about data, we always think of standardized test scores, but there's a lot of other stuff going on there. So I mentioned that last bullet. Our support staff, they use multiple forms of student data to check on kids, see which ones need support, possible intervention strategies. It could be emotional support that shows up in different types of data, whether it's tardies or absences. So there's a lot of other student data besides these standardized scores that we do look at. Any questions? I know that was a lot. I talk fast. Yes, you're on.
So first of all, I would say that the SAT and the ACT and the AP prep are commendable, particularly under the circumstances of the pandemic. I think my concern when I look at what you just shared is that we talk a lot about the students who are already sort of college track and have a lot of resources, and those students perform well. I'm really concerned about the New Jersey GPA scores, regardless of the comparison to the state. We're over a third of kids who are not graduation ready in English, and we are almost a fourth who are not graduation ready in math. That's not good. I mean, you said that was good, but that's not good.
No, that is good because that's a pilot.
I understand.
That's the reason why there's a reason why those scores didn't count. Are they really graduation ready?
Talk to me about, explain that to me, because if I look at those numbers as a scientist, I go, that's not good. A third of students who are not graduation ready. And my question is,
Correct.
you're not doing, these kids that had SAT, ACT, and AP scores that were high are probably not within that gap that's not performing. So are we missing a certain element of our student body who might need additional support to be graduation ready?
Well, some of those SAT scores will absolutely still be in the not graduation ready. We had this same issue, and we go back a little bit when we switched over to PARC. PARC was a new test. We were going to say, PARC is going to basically tell you if you're ready for college and if you're going to do well in college. And they gave the first test and realized, uh-oh, there's a huge disconnect from what we think colleges are asking for and what this test is testing. So we expected this. Again, we don't know how districts similar to us performed, so we have to wait on that. So the jury's still out on that, but I can just tell you from looking at those numbers, when we're 27% ahead of the state, those are good numbers. Because I assure you, if the average is 50%, there's going to be districts all over the place that are in that average. And there's going to be districts similar to us that are closer to that 50%. So I don't know how good, and I'm certainly saying, when I say this is good, this is a test that there were rumblings that it wasn't going to count. I had one student say, my mom already told me this test doesn't count. And Caesar, you were there too. These students sat there and they took it seriously. They had been tested out, and in my opinion, they performed very, very well. We won't know exactly how well, but to say that the rest of the percent is not graduation ready is incorrect to me. And to me, that's why they had to retract it and say, whoa, we can't do that. There's a huge adjustment that colleges have had to make. You guys know this. Colleges have to factor in what does a student look like in 2022 that's coming to us versus 2018, 2019. And this test was trying to say, here's what students should look like. But there was a pandemic. There was a loss of learning that this test did not factor into. I think our kids are going to be in a much better place because, as you know, there were districts that shut down completely. And we stayed open. And we gave kids the opportunity. We had cohorts. We were opening the school. We joked about if we have to come in and cook burgers for these kids for lunchtime, we'll do that. But we did everything we could to keep our school open, and I think it's going to show. I think the class of 22 was the one that really benefited from that. But how good, we'll have to wait and see. Yeah. Sure.
My question to that is, so the percentage of kids that took that in their junior year and they're not college ready, what
Yes.
do we do to help them in that senior year? Do we have specific, I guess, programs or plans to fill that gap for them?
This test was based on certain standards for certain courses. So the math, for instance, was a test on standards for algebra and geometry. And the ELA was on standards for 10th grade English. There's obviously more to being college ready than just those subject areas. So that test just showed that some of the standards, and again, think of those two maths. Geometry was their sophomore year, right in the middle of COVID, and then junior year affected by COVID. So they missed two key maths that are on this test. So the easy answer to your question is we're going to continue to focus on the standards. They're still in a math now, but it's difficult to go back and say, oh, what did you miss in geometry when now they're sitting in a pre-calc class?
Ryan, if I could interject.
Sure.
So NJGPA and NJSLA are based on exactly the same standards. It's just, different grade levels that are taking the test. And in the past 2 years since we started Linkit, we have found, thankfully, a correlation between Linkit and NJSLA scores. And the entire school takes the Linkit tests for math, science, and ELA. And then that information and that data is used to inform instruction. So even for those juniors that perhaps are not, according to NJGPA, graduation ready, those same exact standards and skills are still being addressed senior year through Linkit.
Thank you.
Is that good, Ryan?
Yeah. Yeah, what I was talking about behind the scenes when we presented it, those standards where we saw our students score poorly on a Linkit, those are the ones we're working on. And it's cross-curricular. It's not just, it's some of the skills we were looking at, whether it's identify the voice, can be done in social studies, can be done anywhere. Our kids struggled with charts, surveys, and graphs. That can be done in any subject area. So when we addressed the full faculty, we said, look, our kids are really struggling when they have to look at graphs. So those are the types of things, the skills they're going to work on. Content, you can't go back and do the geometry content because they've moved on, or the English content, but absolutely the skills. And the skills, like Mr. Diliberto said, that are addressed in Linkit, which they did take Form A of. Yes?
Question, I wanted to clarify. It says that they're graduation ready. In conversation, I think I heard it referred to as college ready. So is this a measure of whether one has met the graduation requirements?
It's supposed to be yes.
Not
So right
college
now,
ready.
well, we're trying to get them college and career ready. Because it's a graduation requirement, the state has called it graduation ready. So they want all of our students who are going to get a diploma from West Essex to be graduation ready.
Okay.
Very similar to how the park came in and said we want all students to pass the park and show that they're ready for college and career. So it's just semantics whether they're college and career ready or they're graduation ready, but the idea for this test was to be like what the old HESPA was. You pass the HESPA and you're graduation ready or you're ready for your college and career. This is trying to emulate that.
Thank you. I just
Sure.
want to follow up. The percentage of our graduates that go into college is, it's very high. Do you have the number?
I don't know.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
Right? So graduation versus college ready is kind of almost one and the same. In
Yeah.
this case.
Any other questions? And I can't go without giving thanks to a lot of people for this. Students and the families that went through this, again, I mentioned the class of 2022 because I really felt like their academics were impacted the most with what we went through. So the students and the families that went through it, they persevered. The kids were still coming to school, trying to learn what they can, learning independently, learning on Zoom. Our faculty and staff that just continuously pushed through, and our Mr. Mcquaid and our Board of Education, every time we said, we're going to go to 2 cohorts. We're going to look at the bell schedule. We're going to change this. We're going to change that. You guys always supported us, and I appreciate that greatly. So thank you to all of you as well. And that's it. Dr. Dunleavy. No? Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening. I also just wanted to add to what Mr. Gupta was saying. Things are kind of coming full circle in the sense of when you look at the data, and not to minimize the data, But when you compare that to the report that Ms. Hobie gave, right, there was a rise in the discipline and perhaps a decline. It's all connected, and I think it speaks to the district goals of using data, but also improving the culture and climate of our schools, because it's all related, in my opinion, right? So as we continue, like at the middle school, our HIB numbers, they almost tripled last year. So as we continue to refocus and go back to the future, as I said early in September, get back to the rules and boundaries, we know that, you know, when the kids feel safe in school, then learning is more accessible to them. So I do believe that that will, we have many efforts in the works to address the data piece. So here at the middle school, the month of October is School Safety Month. We have had many activities going on. We started with the Week of Respect. Mrs. Tambiuri, our assistant principal, and our counseling team, we've been utilizing our lunch studies. As you know, we have an hour lunch block. Half of it the kids eat, and then the other half they have a study period. So we try and get them in the lunch study in the auditorium like about once a week or so, and really maximize the 20 to 30 minutes we have with them. So the Week of Respect, we're really focusing on the HIB law, harassment, intimidation, and bullying, making sure that we are identifying a common language, which is really essential, especially for our 7th graders coming new to West Essex, right? Making sure that they have that common language. Outlining strategies to identify and report incidents to an adult. We've reiterated our See Something, Say Something anonymous reporting system with the students. And then the week culminated with our annual Spirit Week and Pep Rally, which is always a lot of fun. I want to make sure I thank Mrs. Summer, Mrs. Bramhall, and our student council for kicking that week off. New Jersey School Violence Awareness Week was the second week in October. We had the North Caldwell Police Department join us on October 6th. They came and spoke to our students again during the lunch study time. They discussed cyberbullying and again the See Something, Say Something philosophy. And it's really important, especially at the middle school level, that the kids are comfortable seeing police officers in the building and not feeling scared or as if something is necessarily wrong. So we try and use every opportunity we can to partner with our local police departments. Red Ribbon Week is coming up. That focuses on substance abuse, drug and alcohol awareness, and substance use. Ms. Purcell, our student assistance counselor, will engage students again during lunch studies. She kind of talks about some of the trends in vaping, and just, we really kind of emphasize making good choices, making good decisions, talking about peer pressure at the middle school level. So everything is very age appropriate for the students. Also part of school safety, you know, is that proactive piece of creating that school environment where kids want to be part of our school community, developing relationships and extending and enhancing the school community, like our local community. So we did a couple things in this area this month. Ms. Denise, Mr. Larry, and the Builders Club held its annual Socktober event. They collect new socks and they donate them to the Fairfield Embrace Relief Fund. Mrs. Machochi and our life skills classes had held an athletic shoe drive fundraiser, and they raised money and donated the shoes to the Special Olympics cause. And then this Friday we have a Pink Out Day in honor of breast cancer awareness. And again, we're just trying to get the kids to recognize that it's more than just them, more than any one individual, and supporting our local community. And then from our School Culture and Climate Initiative, thanks to our counseling department, we have a couple different activities that have kicked off. We have Mindful Mondays. That's kind of our SEL program that kids can opt into. It's an optional program. It happens on Mondays. They go into a room during lunch study and kind of have a calming atmosphere, talk about de-stressing, you know, breathing exercises, things of that nature. That's held by our counselors. They have something new that they're starting this year called We Be Social. That's occurring on Wednesdays. Again, they're trying to help students develop good friendships, how to introduce themselves to new peers, and kind of, you know, which can be difficult and awkward in the middle school years. So that, again, kids can opt into that. And then I want to send a special shout out to Aaron Claff, Anna Donnelly, Andrea Ibrahim, and Nate Holden for reading our morning announcements. This month they provided fun facts for Hispanic Heritage Month. So again, we're trying to create that school community. And I stole Caesar's idea to make my presentation more exciting. I'm trolling you, Caesar. No. So this was the pep rally. Our 7th graders wore white. You can see they had a really nice time out on the turf. We had a beautiful day on Friday. Our 8th graders wore red. And then That's some of our student council representatives. You can see the high school cheerleaders joined us, the high school's marching band joined us. So that's one thing that I really love about West Essex is we really come together as a community on some of these days. Because what's a pep rally without a band and cheerleaders? And then the tug of war, and I'm embarrassed to say that the faculty lost to the 8th grade. Yes, they did. Now listen, I gotta give credit where credit's due. And then, I know, right? I'm sure they crushed him with homework or something the next day, right? And then finally, I just want to welcome Dr. Mcquaid to the family. We're really excited to have you. It's a great place to be. We have some wonderful families and some great students, so welcome. Thank you all.
You took my idea and made it better, because you have pom-poms.
Oh, and that's compliments of sprayed up. I'm sorry.
Pictures.
From the main office, she puts that on the TV, so I did not do all that. Yes. You need them sprayed up.
Just a few items for me, but I will also just take the opportunity to echo the sentiments of Dr. Dunleavy. There's always room for improvement with the school district and the high school, whether it's climate and culture or the academics. But I do think that with regards to the past two presentations from Mr. Gupta and Ms. Hobie, that it is reassuring that we are in a good place here. This is a real good district, and all the stakeholders, and especially the board, can take credit for that and the success that we've had the past few years, despite some challenges. So I am happy to announce that one or more new social media handles will be launched in the coming weeks. This new launch will be student operated primarily from Mr. Joe Cardinal's digital marketing and social media class, but any students or staff members are encouraged to submit content for posting. Posts will be much more frequent and from a student perspective of daily life at West Essex High School. As soon as the handle launches and as soon as it's live, I'll certainly distribute it to the entire community. Hopefully, I believe that the handle that they have in mind is We Nightlife, and hopefully We Nightlife will have many more followers than the now defunct Twitter account, which I will take credit for the demise of that. I shouldn't be in charge of any social media accounts. And that should be launched within the next few weeks. The West Essex Marching Knights and the West Essex Band Boosters will host their annual home show this Sunday, the Tournament of Bands Chapter 10 Championship. Our campus will host 15, actually more than 15, about 20 marching bands from the Tournament of Bands circuit. This is a great event, especially for music lovers. The Marching Knights and Band Boosters spend lots of time and energy getting ready for this event. The Marching Knights, who took first place at their tournament this past weekend at Butler High School, will perform at 5:15, but the bands start at noon. So please stop by and show your support for the Marching Knights. The annual volleyball tournament, the Turkey Classic, will be held on Thursday, November 17th at 3 p.m. in the main gym. The tournament is run by Mrs. Andrea Lauget's Syracuse University Sport Management class. All proceeds are donated to the Caldwell Food Pantry and will be used to supply families in the local community with full Thanksgiving dinners, including turkey, sides, and gift cards to ShopRite. Excuse me. The past 3 tournaments provided Thanksgiving dinners to over 350 families. And of course, Color Day returned indoors for the first time since 2019, when the current seniors were freshmen. Color Day is a fantastic tradition at West Essex. It is a genuine display of rampant school spirit. It's a fun day that culminates with the Battle of the Classes type of pep rally, but perhaps the best part about Color Day is it has absolutely 100% participation, and every single individual in the school is wearing the class t-shirt. And many also take the opportunity to creatively accessorize. And very special thanks to, the small picture of the trucks there, very special thanks to Mark Sinque and Premio Sausage for donating 1,200 sausage and pepper sandwiches so that the entire faculty and the entire student body could eat immediately following the pep rally. And there's a few pictures too, lots of smiles. And that's it for me. Any questions? Thank you.
We're Mr. Gupta, maybe we can go forward with a curriculum committee report when we have the other results and the test results to look at the comparison. Okay. Okay. At this time, I'll open up public comments. Open to the floor for public comments on agenda items only. In accordance with bylaw 0167, a copy of which is available on the district website, the board is now opening the meeting for a period of public comment. Do we have any? Okay, thank you. With that being said, let's start with the agenda. Finance, Cindy, please.
The following finance motions are made at the recommendation of the superintendent of schools. Anything placed on this agenda, items 1 through 13, will be voted upon in one motion, and I so move.
Ms. Vicino?
Yes.
Ms. Egan?
Yes.
Ms. Marcus?
Yes.
Mr. Parati?
Yes to items 1 through 4, abstain items 5 and 6, yes items 7 through 13.
Okay. Mr. Scher?
Yes.
Ms. Skellen?
Yes.
Mr. Sampone?
Yes, items 1 through 4, abstain items 5 and 6, and yes to 6 through 13.
Ms. Wojcicki?
Yes.
And Ms. Calderon?
Yes. Jill, curriculum and special education?
The following curriculum, special education motions are made at the recommendation of the superintendent of schools. Anything placed on this agenda, items 1 through 4, will be voted upon in one motion.
Second.
And I second.
Ms. Vicino?
Yes.
Ms. Egan?
Yes.
Ms. Marcus?
Yes.
Mr. Parati?
Yes.
Mr. Scher?
Yes.
Ms. Skellen?
Yes.
Mr. Sampone?
Yes.
Ms. Wojcicki?
Yes.
Ms. Calderon?
Yes. Personnel, Mary, please.
The following personnel motions are made at the recommendation of the superintendent of schools. Anything placed on this agenda, items 1 through 22, will be voted upon in one motion, and I so move.
Second.
Second.
Okay. Ms. Vicino?
Yes.
Ms. Egan?
Yes.
Ms. Marcus?
Yes.
Mr. Parati?
Yes.
Mr. Scher?
Yes.
Ms. Skellen?
Yes.
Mr. Sampone?
Yes.
Ms. Wojcicki?
Yes.
Ms. Calderon?
Yes. And welcome, Dr. Mcquaid.
Yes.
Yes.
Before we go on to miscellaneous, I just want to point out that within this, we have done, our board has completed their board goals. Alongside of the fact that the school has to have, the district has to have goals, the board also sets aside and aligns goals for us to work on during the year. And at this point, we actually expedited that during our retreat, and we are going to approve our board goals for the following year. Miscellaneous, Jan.
The following miscellaneous motions are made at the recommendation of the superintendent of schools. Anything placed on this agenda, items 1 through 9, will be voted upon in one motion, and I so move.
Second.
Ms. Vicino?
Yes.
Ms. Egan?
Yes.
Ms. Marcus?
Yes.
Mr. Parati?
Yes.
Mr. Scher?
Yes.
Ms. Skellen?
Yes.
Mr. Sampone?
Yes.
Ms. Wojcicki?
Yes.
Ms. Calderon?
Yes. Okay, at this time, I will open the floor to public comments on non-agenda items. Please remember to come up and announce your name, address, and any affiliation. You will be limited to 3 minutes in duration. And the board will, of course, consider your comments as they related to obligations to effectively govern the West Essex District. Oh, hello.
Just have an announcement, really. I'm Kathy Schwiff with The Progress, and I would welcome North Caldwell residents especially to come to Grandview School at 7 p.m. this Wednesday, which is October 19th, because we're having a candidates forum for the 3 people running for 2 seats representing North Caldwell on the West Essex Board of Education. And you can send questions to me in advance, or you can post them that night to the candidates. The school board candidates actually will be followed by mayoral candidates and council candidates as well.
Kathy, I have a quick question about that.
Do all the questions have to be submitted prior to? There'll be no time for?
No,
public-
we'll have some cards that people can write them down that night and hand them up.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right, thank you.
I have one question, though. Do you know when you'll have your student representative to the board? Or?
We're working on it right now.
Okay. Thank you.
Kathy, I was just about to ask the same thing, actually. It's kind of fun to. Will they be coming to all the meetings, too?
Yes.
The incoming, okay, that's great. Debbie Hollenstadt, North Caldwell. First of all, was really happy to see your report and not entirely surprised because I thought the board did an amazing job. I've said it before during the whole pandemic, keeping the doors open as much as possible. So that was great to see. It did seem like it seemed to be that the older grades fared better than the younger grades. Have you guys looked into why that might be, or do you think, in particular, that 8th grade class, do you consider that an outlier, or any explanation?
Definitely the younger grades, and we saw it even worse in elementary school districts where there was a loss of reading, but the skills, when you get to 10th grade, the skills all of a sudden change. So the standardized test will often stop at 8, and then they go Algebra 1 geometry. So what
Right.
you tend to see is those kids who are focused on those skills will perform better. Again, class of 2022 is the one that really would have been impacted by that loss. But as we've seen through all the years, yes,
Yeah.
the older grades tend to do better with these types of things. When there's any type of learning loss, when there's any type of adversity, the higher grades tend to perform better. I'm not sure why, but that's not just a West Essex thing, that's
Yeah.
more in general. When you look at, even when we went back to Ask 5, grade 8 were always the ones, those two grades were always the ones that got affected the most whenever there was a change in test, NJGPA, PARC, of course the pandemic. You tend to see it in grades 5 and grades 8, for whatever reason. I really don't know.
Maybe that speaks to what Dr. Dunleavy was talking about back in September,
It could
about
be.
social
The
emotional growth.
piece affects
Yeah,
the younger
okay.
kids more.
Okay. And then I had a question, I'm not sure who to address it to because she left, about the self-reported numbers when it comes to culture and climate, because there seemed to be a disparity between, that doesn't leave those 75 out of 78, doesn't seem to leave 76 out of 78, doesn't leave a lot of room for improvement. But then back in March, the College of St. Elizabeth, their reporting seemed to show that there was definitely a lot of room for improvement, particularly when it came to the issue of cyberbullying. And so I'm just wondering how those numbers were arrived at, because it doesn't seem to leave a lot of room for improvement, as I said. And I know even just anecdotally, last year, even America Day, Spirit Week, ended up being a really proved itself to be pretty difficult. A day that should have been a day that unifies people showed some sort of natural divisions. And so those numbers sort of felt high to me, and I wondered whether anybody knows exactly how they arrived at those numbers.
So the culture and climate surveys, those are more perception surveys to the students. The self-reporting is more of a compliance checklist.
Compliance with, you mean in terms of like the number of HIB reports or?
Compliance
Oh, compliance with state.
Programs, with state requirements. It's looking at the number of, do we have a school culture and climate committee? You get points for
Got
that.
it.
You have a designated anti-bullying specialist, you get points for that.
So it's, do we appear prepared? Do we appear?
It's actually a checklist. When you go
Okay.
to the different categories and it's, rating yourself in those areas of compliance.
Okay, got it, thank you.
I'm lost.
Anyone else? Okay, before we close out, I would just like to say thank you to the principals, Mr. Gupta, and all of those who have been doing such a great job since we started the opening of school. It's been difficult because we're all back to quote-unquote normal, whatever a new normal is, and you've really stepped up and you're acknowledging the strengths, the weaknesses, and trying to, make the gap a little bit smaller and bring, a healthier environment. And it's really showing, and I'm just very pleased that you were all here to report that tonight. And I really do hope that our community appreciates it going forward. So thank you for that.
Ms. Wojcicki, would you like to read us out, please?
There being no further business before this Board of Education, be it resolved that this public meeting be adjourned at 8:35. Motion to adjourn? Second. All in favor?